cause for the previous three. If you examine all the transgressions of government so far under any administration, and while we keep speaking about weak structures and the need for changing systems, the reality of the failures in the public sector is the lack of enforcement. Belize public sector has some of the best internal control in the Commonwealth countries. The problem is that they have been made laws and regulations, by the way. In fact, the present Prime Minister boasted that he was responsible for codifying some of those regulations into laws. But when you look at the lack of enforcement, the non-compliance with these regulations, which causes the Auditor General not to be able to do the audit for many years. When you look at the lack of enforcement in other various sectors, take the immigration itself. If we had in place the internal audit, which should have been there for that ministry, if the Auditor General was there to be able to audit because the internal controls were being complied with, that transgression would have been detected. And to the extent it was not immediately detected, if it was not prevented, it would have been detected in a very timely fashion. So the Minister for Immigration, Mr. Godwin House, talking about putting in 8 persons, imagine, 3 social partners, 3 CEOs, somebody from the Solicitor General Office, and a CEO, I think, from their ministry. 8 people, imagine, to inspect documents. Why is it that we cannot simply demand as citizens that we begin to enforce the laws and regulations? The Prime Minister claimed that he was advised in the delegation of authority to Elvin Penner, who is not a minister in the cabinet indeed. Nowhere in the Constitution can the Prime Minister do this. You go back to the recent case from the Caribbean Court of Justice recently, which you did a good job in highlighting the main points on your television. It said that it's only the Parliament that can delegate authority. And once the Parliament delegates the authority, that person to whom the authority is delegated cannot redelegate. The only institution right now, or the department I know of, there may be others, that the Parliament delegated authority to who can redelegate is the Public Service Commission, and only in limited circumstances. We have the non-enforcement of the laws because the Commissioner of Police, I have been in government for 20 years as a public officer, 10 years as a minister. We had transgressions of this type and worse before, not so widespread of course. And we don't have to go to the minister. The Commissioner of Police is allowed to come in and should come in. He has an obligation to come in. Now you are hearing the people now who have to carry out investigation by our very Constitution. I have seen a DPP when there was a problem in the hospital. The DPP initiated an investigation without even going to the minister. But here we have now the DPP says he cannot do that. The commissioner says he cannot do this. The senior public officers, and I am not condemning public officers generally, the majority of them are on open votes. We don't have much, proportionally speaking, PEs, permanent establishments. And here we have 15 ministers who are supposed to be giving control and direction over these departments, and actually have senior public officers carrying out instructions contrary to the law. We have the accounting officers, about 10 or 15 of them also, who are the accounts officers and have not been enforcing the internal controls. So I think to say that the lack of enforcement is the #1 problem. The citizens of this country, and I think we all have to begin to refocus now and look for where the problem begins, and let's begin to address it. We can insist on these enforcements of the laws. And until when we enforce what we have, and we begin to comply with the internal controls on all our laws, there's no sense in going about trying to improve one system. But you're going to improve on something when you have not even complied with what you have. This is typical of the argument with the Green Revolution. Those who said the Green Revolution failed, they failed in the debate because it's not that the Green Revolution failed. The Green Revolution just was not implemented. The system has not failed. We have failed to comply with the system. We have failed to carry out the internal controls of this public sector based on some universally accepted principles of internal control. If we had done those, we wouldn't have these problems now. If we do not allow ministers, which continue to do, to give directives to senior public officers, who they have appointed themselves now as CEOs, to carry out instructions, transgressing the laws. I am shocked to see a minister of the immigration, the paragon of virtue, himself initiating what he calls an administrative investigation. The first time in my life I had a wanting to explain what is this administrative investigation. The minister has nothing to do with no investigation. The minister should have already from the beginning when it was brought to his notice, get the commissioner to come in, get the police to come in immediately. The Prime Minister had no right to get on public television and to say that as a Prime Minister and as a lawyer, he found no evidence to suggest that there was criminal charges against Bennett. That is not for the Prime Minister to be doing. He has no right as the Chief Executive of the Cabinet to be making such public announcements. That are for the Commissioner of Police and the Director of Public Prosecution.
Right.
So to me, we need to refocus. We need to demand that these laws must be applied. They must be implemented.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jose Coye, former Minister of Health. As you were speaking, and I just so apologize, the phones continue to ring, but we can't take any more calls. God willing, tomorrow we'll continue our conversation. But the new ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Belize, says that his primary focus is going to be the rule of law. And I decided over the weekend to go and look up and study what the rule of law is. And when you begin to talk about breaching the rule of law, it is that some people believe that they are above the law. And I think what we are indeed beginning to see is that some people within government, within cabinet, let me rephrase that, very senior people within government, DPP's office, Commissioner of Police, office of the Commissioner of the Police, cabinet itself, whatever, we are seeing lately very flagrant either disregard for or actual breaking of law by a group of people that have been individually and collectively responsible for the upkeep of the rule of law.